Hi, everybody. Ian Bremmer here. We are back to Iran and President Trump resubmitting to Congress an intention to go back to war, which I guess is, 60 days on and then, momentarily off and 60 days on. So you don't have to worry about War Powers Act anymore. That's the way we're reading it. And more importantly, this is going to be significant ongoing disruption of the strait if the United States is putting a blockade back on the Iranian ports and not allowing them to get shipping out, then the Iranians have the ability and the willingness to engage in strikes against other ships that are going through to ensure that they don't get through. Now, the Iranians don't have the ability to put a blockade in place. They don't have the military capacity for that. But that's not what they need to do. They just need to make it suitably dangerous to go through, that the crews don't want to crew the ships and the insurers aren't prepared to insure them. And that means it doesn't really matter if the United States is prepared to escort. Most of the transit through Hormuz will not actually go. And so we went from about 25% of pre-war levels in the last week down to about 5-10% over the last 12 hours. And presumably, if the U.S. actually goes forward and implements this blockade, it'll be even lower than that. Now, prices have risen, of course, on the back of this. Oil prices are spiking. They're not at the levels that we saw in the teeth of the war for a few reasons. First is that a whole bunch of supply is being oriented around the strait now, and there are alternatives, and there's been some stockpiling, and the Chinese have shown that they're much more flexible in what they do and don't decide to take on the basis of price, given the control that the state has over the economy, as well as the extraordinary amount of storage that they have in strategic reserve. And there is the potential if prices remain higher that we'll see demand destruction. Plus, the UAE is producing a lot more, and they are out of OPEC now. And the Saudis and others have given the Iraqis ability to produce a little bit more. So it's not as shocking. And therefore, there's more flexibility, but also American storage levels are low. And you still don't have the repairs all the way through on the facilities that have been damaged in and around the Gulf. So the tail lag of the damage from the supply chains being disrupted, both for energy prices, but also for helium and for petrochemicals and for food that relies on fertilizer. This is going to be with us for a while, which means more negative for the US and for Trump's popularity and for midterm elections. Now, where he obviously knows he's not doing well for the midterms, and the fact that he has now gone back into military confrontation with Iran shows that he's willing to take that pain, which makes him more credible with the Iranians, but makes him also more likely to take a bigger hit come November. Now, there is a difference between putting a blockade in place and going after Iranian nuclear facilities, Pickaxe Mountain, which Trump talked about in the last 24 hours. Would he go after civilian and energy infrastructure? If that happens, then the Iranians don't just hit ships in return. That's one tit for tat level, but would actually go after Gulf states and their energy infrastructure and their civilian infrastructure. And that's when costs would really explode well beyond what they were during the war. So the ceasefire at this point is gone, but we have not yet returned to all out war. And that is, I think, an open question on the basis of whether or not Trump is really going to go far. He has said he's going to put tolls on ships going through. He says a lot of things. It's illegal. Actually implementing that would require either a deal with the Iranians, which we no longer have, or significant military escalation from the US to ensure that they could no longer disrupt the strait. That means much more military intervention along the coast of the strait, ground forces, much more costly, lots of lives being lost. I don't see Trump as prepared to order that at this point. And so, absent that, I don't see any tolls being charged by the United States against ships going through, irrespective of what Trump has said. So it's sticking with the policy that has been articulated over the past months by J.D. Vance and by Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth. But even if there's no there with that announcement, it still doesn't mean that we're getting back to an open strait anytime soon, because it is the Iranians that think that their principal leverage is not about developing nuclear capabilities, it's about shutting down and profiting from the strait. And those negotiations are principally not with the Americans, who they don't expect will pay them and don't actually trust. It's with the Saudis and the Emiratis and the Kuwaitis and the Bahrainis and the Qataris. And there had been some progress with Oman over the past couple months to create a similar mechanism to what you have with Turkey and the Dardanelles, where there would be some kind of a fund that other countries would pay into, that would be for overall management of the strait, but would not be a per ship toll. It There were members of the Trump administration, members of the cabinet, that thought that that was going to be an acceptable compromise for Trump. But for now, it is not. And as long as Trump is unilaterally prepared to ensure that doesn't happen, he has the ability to disrupt it, just as the Iranians unilaterally have the ability to disrupt the Americans trying to get shipments through. So no one by themselves can get to a deal. Both individually can ensure that the desired outcomes of either the Iranians or the Americans cannot come to fruition, which is why you had this loosey-goosey memorandum of understanding to begin with. It provided the Iranians a lot without them having to give up anything on the nuclear front. But then the United States and the Gulf states did not actually follow through on everything that the Iranians believed that they were promised, which is assets being unfrozen and influence over strait traffic after the 60-day period. Unless the Iranians get what they want, they're going to continue to blow up ships. For the last month, 6 weeks, the ships that have gone through, and we were starting to see the strait move more normally, most of those ships were not through the Iranian passageway in the north, where they have influence. It's through the south, where Oman is. It's through the middle, where there are a bunch of mines, but it's a larger and easier transit, or it's going blind with the transponders off. The Iranians didn't like that. It showed the Gulf states weren't prepared to really give them all that much. They hadn't unfrozen the assets, so Iran hit back with military strikes. And the Americans now hitting back against Iran, and accordingly the deal falls apart. Nothing here has really changed from the war fighting and the positions of the Iranians, the Americans, before the ceasefire was in place. Perhaps a better understanding of the leverage that both sides have, but still an unwillingness to countenance that with a compromise that makes the Americans look frankly pretty weak. So that's where we are. That's why prices are going back up. That's why more destruction is going to occur. And hopefully it's contained to not being the all-out war that would do very severe damage to the states in the region, would lead to a lot more people getting killed, and would probably precipitate a global recession. We aren't there yet. I don't think we're going to get there, but certainly more possible than it was 24 hours ago. That's it for me, and I'll talk to you again real soon.